everyone, and welcome to the 2015 Rolex Kentucky 3-day event presented by Land Rover. I'm Caroline Culbertson, and I'm here with course designer Derek DeGrazia and Mr. Jim Wofford, and we're pleased to bring you a course preview, and we're going to be walking through some of the major complexes that riders will be facing on Saturday. Derek, before Rolex was even completed last year, you were already dreaming up ways to change it up. You wanted to really redesign it, change the direction the course was going, and you've used some kind of new parts of the horse park this year. And so walk us through how the course is going to be different this year.
Well, we're at the start now, and the start already is going out the direction of how we finished last year. And from there, it's going to take quite a few new lines through the park, which some places where we've never been before. And so I think it will really give a different twist to the course. And I think that some of the old favorites, the features that have always been on the course, will come up in a different order. And so we could see things ride a little bit differently than they have in the past.
And this truly is the Super Bowl of eventing and all of the nerves and anxiety that comes with that. And so, Jim, just any final kind of words of wisdom as somebody that's galloped across this Kentucky bluegrass a time or two for those riders that might be setting out for the first time?
I think the riders setting out for the first time, I want them to remember to listen to their horse and read the conditions. Derek's already referred to the fact that we're going over a lot of new ground, and it's quite possible, if given the rain, that we'll be working in difficult circumstances. So this is not a course where you're going to just skip around and look wonderful. You're really going to have to fight for what you get.
Great. We look forward to highlighting a few of those complexes right now. Well, we're here at the first complex on course for ABC, the Market Moguls. And Derek, we've gotten the horses out of that first field. We've gotten them galloping a little bit. Just walk us through this first combination that these horses and riders will see.
Well, first of all, the first three fences on the course, which are behind us, have really sort of gotten the horses out onto the course and have gotten them galloping and jumping. And this is the first complex on the course, and it's one where the first thing is I think this is one of the first places where the horses and riders are going to come into an area where there are going to be a lot of spectators. And I think that in itself, for a lot of these horses and riders, is going to be a little bit of a shock. But beyond that, I think that coming in over 4A, it's quite a big jump. But not only that, it's followed by, you have 5 strides for most to the rail, but there's quite a bit of a drop off the rail. And then beyond that, we have about another 5-6 strides to the narrow stump with the brush on the back. And I think that jumping over the rail, they can't get too strong over that rail, because otherwise they're not going to have control on the back side to be able to navigate their way over that stump.
Jim, looking at this as from just a rider's perspective, you know, this is testing a few different things, but so what do you think is going to take to get it done?
Well, I think you've got to be in gear by the time you get here, and you have got to commit, because this is not a complex for the faint-hearted. The A element is huge. The striding is, Derek says there's an option. There's basically either go forward or go home. I really think that if you're chipping in and throwing up over these jumps, you're close to the stables. Just tip your hand and come back another day. I love this because Derek has used the terrain. This is not just a jumping exercise. It's a jumping exercise on undulating ground, and that has such an effect on the horse's balance and on the rider's horsemanship. Does the rider feel what's going on? Do they understand what the terrain is doing to the horse? Finally, I think that's a really, really evil, nasty, dirty trick that Derek has played at the C element, because it's quite narrow and it's looking right at the crowd. And for a second, a green horse, green at this level, can be forgiven if he looks at that and says, "Boss, do you really want me to jump the whole crowd?" And so there can be a moment of hesitation there in the horse's mind. And at that point, the rider has to say, "I walk the course, I know what I'm doing, step here, it will work." And if the riders will do that, it will work. And you'll get a tremendous round of applause from a big crowd here.
And And we're here at 7AB, the Frog Pond, and this is the first time that these horses will get their toes wet on course. And Derek, once again, really using the terrain here, and this looks like quite a challenging complex.
Well, after the last complex at 4AB, the horses have had a good gallop around the country here and have had two nice big galloping fences before they come here. The approach here is slightly downhill off the turn, and when they come here again, it is the first time they go in the water, but it's a pretty substantial drop into the water, and then followed by a very actually large table actually as they come up over the slope here. This is going to require a really forward ride, and I think you cannot be pulling on the reins here. You just have to jump in and keep moving.
And Jim, with this being relatively early on course, we're only at the 7th fence on course here, and just a little bit about riding aggressively over that drop and kind of getting it done over this larger table on the other side of the pond.
You've already said it. What I'm going to warn my riders about is, look, you're going to be galloping at a high rate of speed just before this, then you're going to make a 180-degree turn. Well, that's already going to slow your horse down about enough. You don't need the reins to slow down. The situation that's going to slow you down, the horse is going to see the water. He's going to back off a little bit anyway. Your whole attitude here has got to be jump this sucker. And when you land, you have to land with your eyes up and look across and slightly to the right and ride. And then in the last stride, you're going to see that the terrain changes again. So I already see a theme emerging from Derek's course this year, that as you get to the jump, you're not just on level ground. The ground's going to do something a little sophisticated, and you, the rider, have to be there to help your horse. When the ground falls away like that, the rider has to be slow with their body, strong with their leg, and ride across a huge table.
And Derek, this is flagged at, it's two different obstacles, but it's numbered as A, B. It's not two separate elements. And so just relevance there and kind of what that means for riders.
Well, that means that basically once they jump in, they have to keep going to the second fence. There are no circles allowed in here, and basically if they jump in and they sort of peck on landing and get up the horse's neck, that they better recover soon, because they need to keep going to the second fence, and that's really what it's all about here.
Well, and as with any four-star course, any proper four-star course, it just keeps coming at you, and that's certainly the case here. Well, here at 8 and 9 AB, the park question certainly has caused some problems on course before, and it's a little bit different this year, and there's a few different routes that riders can take. Derek, just walk us through the different ways that riders can get through this.
Well, I think that, as you said, that there are different routes. There is definitely a straight way here, and there are a couple of different long ways. And I think the main thing is as the riders approach here, they've got to make sure not only do they change the shape of their horse's canter, but they also keep the energy in the canter, because they've got to really be positive when they jump in here. When they jump in, there is a definite line for the straightway. And they have to be able to maintain that line. The problem is that as they jump in, they're jumping over that ditch at an angle. And when they jump over the ditch at an angle, most horses would rather straighten it out and try to jump over the ditch straight. And if that happens, it's going to take them off their line to the jump coming out. And so I think that the key is when they jump in, they've got to keep their eye up, looking at the line, and then be very positive jumping out over the brush that is angled quite a bit on the way out. If they do want to take the straighter way here, there is a brush to the left of the straightway here, which will then take them around to the other side of the ditch, and then they have to jump back the other way over the ditch, and then basically take a much wider line to the brush that is the B element of 9.
And Jim, at this point on course, riders probably are getting an idea of kind of how their horses are going and how their horses are handling this course. So do you think that we'll see riders opt for the longer route here?
I think an awful lot of riders will try the straight route first, but we will see every kind of permutation and combination here. The course, as you watch people get ready for this, you'll see riders walking the distances. Let me solve the distance problem for you now. It's forward. I mean, that's another theme that I see coming from Derek's course. If you want to do well here, Rolex 2015, you must attack and keep attacking.
Okay, well, riders, you've heard it from the expert himself. You've got to ride forward on Saturday. And as with all of Derek's courses, really holding your line and kind of staying focused will definitely be key here at the Park Question on Saturday. Well, when we think of Rolex cross country, I think we think of the head of the lake, very iconic. And Derek, it's a little bit different this year. Riders actually only pass through the water one time, whereas in past years they've come into the water, gone out, and re-entered. And so this is a really different setup this year. Just walk us through the options that the riders have coming into this complex.
Well, this year we are coming from the upper side, and there is a downhill approach to the cabins which are up behind us here, and it all starts there because basically from the time you jump over that first cabin, you've really entered into this combination, and you really have to know where you're going, what you are going to do here, because there is a lot to do here. And I think that once they come over the cabin, it's the line to the log jumping into the water, and then from there going to the first chevron brush, which is quite narrow and big in the water, and then from there going to another chevron brush, which is up on the land, but there happens to be a little bit of a rise coming up out of the water to that, which is going to make a bit of a difference as they approach that. And I will say, if you come and look at that chevron brush coming up out of the water, it is big.
Jim, what do you think is going to be the dividing factor here between riders that take one route versus the other?
I think the riders have to decide if their horse can still be thinking quickly a third of the way around the course. This also is going to be the site of the biggest crowd of the day. There's a lot of distraction, a lot of noise going on here. Your horse has to jump water well, because if they have a tendency to hold back or to slither off to one side or another, you better go the long way here, where you have more time to get from one of the narrow brushes to the next.
And optimum time this year on course is 11 minutes and 6 seconds. And this is a long course. That's going pretty fast. So just talk a little bit about throughout the entire course, kind of how riders that are going for time are going to make that happen.
I think there are sections on the course where the rider can really gallop. They have to make sure that they're moving over onto fresh grass, because you'll see a lot of footprints at the end of the day on Saturday. There'll be a lot of deep spots there where horses have sunk in. So the rider has to make sure the horse is on top of the ground. But for example, after 4ABC, there's a real section there where someone that wants to try and win this can turn it on. I think coming down the hill towards the head of the lake here, again, the riders can take advantage of the downhill run, but they have to remember that there's an awful lot of jumping left to do. So that's the balancing act, that's the horsemanship, and that's part of the test here at Rolex.
All right, well, we'll certainly see a lot of spectators here at the head of the lake on Saturday, and we look forward to bringing you the next question on course. All right, we're here at 16AB, the Dewberry of Ireland Mounds. And Derek, just walk us through the keyhole to the corner and kind of the goals of your design here.
Well, as they come up the lane here, it's quite a straight approach here, but the horses, all they see when they're coming up the lane is they do see the keyhole, but they don't see what's really beyond it. And I think not until you're up on the mound do you see that there's actually something beyond it. The riders here really have to know their line and to which side they're going to go on the angled brushes coming out. And the other thing is, I think the riders really have to know how the mounds here, how the terrain within the mounds is going to affect the horse's stride, because I think really that's the key. And you know, to me, again, once they jump in, one, they've got to know the line, two, they've got to keep the line, and three, they've got to keep going.
Jim, definitely horses might be a little bit surprised to find out that they're jumping through that tiny little keyhole. And so just as a rider, kind of keeping your eye through the keyhole and sort of riding your horse through it, and kind of the importance of knowing your horse.
That's the thing that I'm going to make a big point of when I walk this with the riders, is you have to know your horse. Every horse is a little weak one way or another, and you have to know that, and you want to put the high side on his weak shoulder. If my horse tends to jump to the right, then I'm going to come slightly right to left and jump back into the left-hand side of the B element, or the other way around. But I have to know my horse. I'm seriously thinking about not walking the course with my riders and telling them, look, go on a straight line and attack all the way around, because everything that we've seen so far, you know, there's a lot of sophisticated chat about it, but the bottom line is get straight, go forward, and stay straight all the way through.
And how much do you think the terrain is going to play a role here as far as the horse's balance?
The terrain plays a big part in the horse's balance, and I'm thrilled to see a course that in a lot of ways reintroduces the concept of terrain to cross-country riding. We are supposed to ride across country, and that doesn't mean that we gallop down a hill and then go on level ground and jump things. It means that as we are jumping, we're jumping up, down, and across. The rider has to feel that. The horse has to be adept at keeping his balance in those situations, and we're going to see that here.
Derek, last year this keyhole was actually up at the Land Rover Hollow, and we've moved it to a different part of the course this year. And so what was the intent behind that?
Well, first of all, these mounds here have not been used on the course in a number of years, and so I wanted to bring them back. And so to me, I was sort of, just playing around with things and and seeing how things would work. And I thought that this element here, we had the angled brushes last year were part of a combination that was a very, very sharp line of angled brushes down at another part of the course, and so I wanted to not just throw them away. I wanted to use them again, and it just happened that all this sort of fit together and really worked well here.
Well, I think this will definitely be a fun combination to watch come Saturday. All right, we're here at 18 ABC, the Land Rover Hollow, and Derek, once again, the riders have to kind of decide which route they're going to take.
Yes. First of all, after the keyhole, they had quite a long gallop up to the top of the course here, which has been climbing steadily since we've been at the head of the lake. So I think that's one thing you have to take into consideration. The other thing is that once they get up here, we do have a jump with the cedar oxer prior to getting here, but then in the approach here, again, coming off of a bit of a turn, they have a fairly substantial log jumping down into the hollow. After that, they do have an option with the B and the C. The fence this year, to me, there's a lot of terrain here. Not only are you going down and up, but then you're going back down to the C element, which is the corner at the C element. And I think the riders are going to have to really be careful as they come up out of the hollow to make sure that they have their horses in control to jump the C element, because the line there, I think, is pretty difficult.
Jim, we've had a bit of a gallop, and we have a nice big open oxer kind of coming into this. So what are riders going to have to do to sort of get this technical part of the course done?
The thing I'm going to tell them when we get here is, for heaven's sakes, when you leave the start box, bring your brain with you, because you're now more than halfway around. Not every horse is going to make the time here. We know that already. How hard the time to make is, we won't really know until the competition starts to kind of get going. But the riders now, they have to jump 18A, but if their horse doesn't land absolutely true, straight as an arrow, they need to go the long way here, because there's trouble. The fence down in the middle here is big, and the corner out, the straight line corner out, again, it's not just on rising and falling ground, it's on sinuous ground. The ground pushes the horse past the point of the corner. That's a very, very sophisticated question. It probably becomes undoable on a tired horse. So the rider has to really know before they get here what sort of horse they have.
So do you think that riders at this point in the course, we're at the furthest point away from the start box here. We're at halfway around the course, a little further than that. And do you think that we're going to see horses and riders maybe getting physically and maybe mentally tired?
I don't think there's any maybe about it. I think they're going to be starting to feel, those of them that have not done their homework, the horses are going to start to settle in their stride. At that point, the rider has to say, well, it's not my day, but if I'm careful, I can finish. I can still get a piece of the action. They give out prize money a long way down the list. I'm going to hang in there and get some of it, even though I know I'm not going to get all of it.
Well, certainly it's going to be a long walk home for those riders that can't quite get it done here at this complex, and we look forward to bringing you the next question on course. And now we're at 24AB, the USCA Fox's Den, and Derek, this is a nice big open airy oxer to a pretty tight turn to a corner here, but the riders have a couple of different options.
Well, I think here, I think there are a few things we have to think about, and the one is that the approach here, when they are approaching this, they are going to just see the oxer. And I think that a lot of riders, though, have to really prepare for what's coming after the oxer. And this is a point in the course. We're getting sort of close to 9 minutes here, and I think that's when you have to start really knowing what you have underneath you as far as the adjustability in your horse. And I think that the important thing here is that they really make sure that they jump the oxer thinking about the turn, and then obviously the corner that comes after the turn. And to me, this is where the riders really have to be thinking.
Jim, what do you think that with these hidden fences that the horses can't see, what do you think that it's going to take for riders to prepare their horses for, not just a fence that the horses can't see immediately coming off of that oxer, but it's also a corner?
What goes on here is the riders walk this and they say, well, that's not that tight a turn, and that's not that hard an approach to that corner at the B element. And that's all true if your horse is fresh working in a sand ring early in the morning, but late in the afternoon when your horse is tired, coming downhill with a spread fence coming in, this is going to be a very difficult combination to ride well. There are going to be a lot of runouts at the corner element for the horses and riders that try and go the short way here. This is a much tighter turn than people realize because the horses are no longer fresh and fit and responsive. They're starting to get aggressive. Their adrenaline is taking over. They're not thinking so much. The rider has to do more thinking for them.
And do you think that riders are going to plan to take the longer route and go all the way around this group of trees, or do you think that maybe they would kind of come in thinking that they had a different horse than they had earlier on course, and as a result of maybe jumping in differently than planned, is that going to take riders to the longer route?
I do predict that riders will walk carefully both lines. Because all the coaches are going to be thinking the same thing. Kid, bring your brain with you when you get here. If your horse hiccups over there, you'd better go the long way because he's telling you that he's not thinking well, he's not jumping well, he needs to just get home quietly.
All right, and up next we're going to be looking at the water park. One of the last major complexes here on course is the water park. And Derek, this came much earlier in the course last year. And so just what should riders look for this year with it being later in the course?
Well, obviously, I think the difference is that last year it was fence 5 and almost the same identical fence jumping in. However, this year it is fence 26. And so I think that the riders here, while I think that the horses, they definitely should be going and should be jumping here. The big question here is that all the fences here they're all related, and I think that the riders here have to really know their line because the adjustability of the horse at this point in the course is not going to be that great, and so it's very important that they know that not only their horse's stride length but also the line that they're going to take in order to get through this safely.
And Jim, this is now the third time that these horses have put their feet in their water. And do you think that any riders will kind of rest on their laurels a little bit and think that their horses are just going to plunge right in?
That can happen, but they'll get an education if they do that. You have to keep your thumb on the button all the way around this course. I mean, that's become obvious to us. Derek spoke of the adjustability of the horse. I would also speak of the guideability of the horse, because between the B and the C element, that is quite a steep curve back to the right to jump the final element. The final element, you must be very accurate. It's hard to be accurate on a tired horse. If your horse is tired here, you got a problem.
And Jim, what should riders kind of be thinking about with their, like you said, their tired horses, just kind of nursing them along to get them across that finish flag?
Yes, the first thing to do is to slow down and accept that you're going to be penalized with time faults. If you miss one fence, you get 20 penalties. It takes a lot of time faults to add up to 20. You're better off to be a little slow and be sure. And I hope that by the time the riders get here, they've made that decision if they need to.
All right, well, we're just a few fences from home, and up next we'll have some closing thoughts for you. All right, and we're here at the final fence on course. And Derek, I know that you're going to be up there on Saturday watching each and every horse and rider that leaves that start box over every single fence. Just talk a little bit about what you hope to see from our competitors on Saturday.
First of all, I hope they use their brain, and I think that it's going to be very important that over the next few days that they walk this course, that they have a very definite plan about how they're going to ride the course. Big thing is time management, listening to their horse and knowing. I think that in the end they have to be able to have a backup plan, especially if their horse starts to get tired along the way, that they have another plan to be able to get that horse safely to the finish.
Jim, now that we've kind of walked the entire course, just general impressions of the course and kind of the general attitude that riders are going to have to make it to this last fence.
It's a nice combination of a very modern course. It's very narrow. It's very technical. And at the same time, there's been a reintroduction of terrain. So in that sense, it's going to be old-fashioned. And if you throw in difficult conditions, which is a possibility, if we get a lot of rain here, this ground will get soft. That changes a lot of things. This will be a very, very good, interesting competition to watch.
Thank you so much to all of our sponsors, and thank you especially to Mr. Jim Wofford and Mr. Derek DeGrazia for going on this course walk with me. And we are going to be very excited to watch how this plays out on Saturday.